Coming up on the No Ceilings NBA show, we are going to continue previewing the 2027 NBA draft, as well as talk about some potential NBA players who might be looking for a breakout season. Coming up next. Welcome to the No Ceilings NBA show. My name is Corey Tulaba, and I am here as always with my co-host Albert Garbage Time Ghim. You're rocking with the Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst. Albert, how are we doing?
We're living, yeah, we always say we're living the dream, right? We're here, we're talking about ball. I'm excited. I think on our pod today, we're covering some interesting guys. And I think I like the mix of players that we've decided on to talk about because I think we're going to have some colorful conversations about some of these dudes. So I'm ready to rock. You know what? I won't lie though. My body feels a little broken. Uh, Took the family to Disneyland yesterday. I'm not running at 100%, but who can complain after going to the happiest place on earth? So I'm ready to rock.
That's right. There's no rest days, right? No load management. You go to Disney and you enjoy some time with the fam and overpay for some bubble machines. You come and you pod the next day and you think about what you've done. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. And we're starting it out, baby, by hitting the 2027 draft, and we're hitting the top of the class first. A guy who we both got a chance to get eyes on over the course of 4 or 5 days at the Nike Hoop Summit, practices, scrimmages, game time. And we have gone back, obviously, and broken down some of the other high school film for you all to preview you for somebody who I quite like, Abdou Toure from Arkansas, played at Notre Dame. Will be 19.86 years old on draft night this year. He is at the Nike Hoop Summit in shoes. He measured at 6'6" and a half, 206 with a 6'9.5" wingspan. I would classify him as like a classic swingman, kind of like a 2-3 who can, swing back and forth. And Albert, to me, his standout skill, you always like to say, what is your superpower? He is an absolute freak athlete.
Yeah, yeah. I tried to think about different ways to explain his athleticism, but I think he just glides is his thing. Like it looks very effortless when he's in the air. And there are some people like that. I'm gonna give a shout out to one of my buddies growing up. His name was Andrew Choi. This guy was about 5'6", but he would just glide. He would dominate basketball tournaments growing up and volleyball. He tried to get into that, but just a guy who just glides. And like Abdou Toure is one of these guys, just glides in the air. It's so easy for him. He was born to be an athlete, one of these types of guys. Maybe he didn't have to. I know, not to say that he hasn't tried, but even if he didn't try, he would have just been an athlete, one of
Yeah.
these types of guys. And yeah, I think you're right in saying that that is kind of like the marquee superpower thing with him. He is a freak in the air. He's got real agility stuff to him, speed. We'll go over all of it, but
Mhm.
yes, I agree. He is a freak.
Yeah, if you were trying to describe him and you had to pick out one thing, I think that's the thing that you would pick out. Be like, nobody in this class might get up like him.
Yeah.
Like, and Dirty Dancer in the chat says it was weird to have my eye drawn to him, not Billy Richmond. Yeah, like those two guys on the wing, it's like Tori's probably he's a better athlete,
Yes.
like, or at least vertically, like more explosive. And like you said, he glides, he floats, but he gets like up off the floor really quickly. Um, and there's some midair flexibility, and there's some really fun stuff, and you see all of that in your in the finishing. And the thing I like about him, right, because you look at a guy like Zach Levine,
Mm,
right, another guy who glides in the air,
yeah.
right, really gets up, but he's always been a finesse dunker. He's
Mm,
been a showroom dunker. You know,
Mm,
he's not somebody who's really like, oh, somebody's waiting at the rim. I'm going to go challenge him and put him on a poster. I don't think his poster reel would be, as long as some of the other dunkers that, we've looked at historically as the greatest ever. Torre will go in and
yeah.
put you on a poster. Like he wants to like sign his name on the screen, like on the broadcast. Like the dunk he had against Inglewood is one of the craziest poster dunks I've seen from a high school kid, like in recent memory,
Yeah.
where you don't even really realize how he's about to explode.
Mhm.
He drives off the left wing, kind of ends up on the baseline, and just gets up after blowing by Jason Crow, and just rises up to the help and just baptizes somebody at the rim. And you're like, whoa, man! Like I did not. I know you can get up. I didn't necessarily see that coming, but he's got a ton of those, um, in his reel, and he also ends up at the free throw line a good amount just because he is going up and attacking and stuff. So I think, he uses that kind of insane verticality in a way where he's actually going to try to score at the rim, try to get fouled. And then when somebody is at the rim, he does that kind of thing where, he'll kind of like go up and then switch it to an underhand and try to like,
Yeah.
finger roll it in because his head's at the rim. He can kind of finish some of those too. So I really liked his finishes because I also thought he had some touch there. It wasn't just like, oh, because a lot of athletic guys, right? They kind of struggle finishing at the rim, and there is some touch, some jelly to him
Mm.
that I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, man, you kind of beat me to it, but I think what I wanted to touch on was there's and you mentioned this on another pod that we talked. I forgot who we were talking about. Forgive me, but you mentioned like control chaos, right? And I think there's some of that to Torrey too, because as athletic as he is and as violent as he can be sometimes, you mentioned some of the finesse with him, the body control, right? The hang
Mm-hmm.
time, the touch finishes through contact, through hanging in the air. Some of that stuff on his film reel is really special. And it's really impressive to see. And that type of stuff is important because he is, well, no, he has the ability to get downhill in a real way. And as long as he's got that type of aggression to him with the body control and the finesse touch as well, those are kind of the ingredients you're looking for when you're looking for like a premium downhill finisher.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you want them collecting the fouls too, and you want them, mixing things up with their finishes as well, some high finishes with touch, blah, blah, blah. But I think in terms of like where we're starting with him, the baseline with his ability to explode and to have that kind of touch, finesse, and body control, I think is really special. And I think I'm excited to see him do a lot of that at Arkansas this year in the SEC and to see how that might even translate to some of the raw numbers with
Mm-hmm.
him. If he's attacking, being aggressive, getting to the foul line a ton, what if he's in the conversation for like, top freshman in the country? Like
Mm-hmm.
that could happen if we see some of the stuff that we're seeing. And also, the fun thing with all of this is that this isn't like a super loaded freshman class. And so there's a real opportunity for him to kind of grab the reins and be like, you know what? I have all the tools to be that guy in this
Mm-hmm.
class. And if he just takes over and puts it all together, there's a real conversation in a real world where we could find ourselves talking about him in, April and May going, this guy might have been the best freshman in his class.
Yeah, or at least is the guy that you'd most like to take the chance on all
Right.
the tools. Like I think there's a real chance he ends up in like top 3 conversations.
Yeah.
Um Now, I don't want to guarantee that. There's a
Sure.
lot of mouths to feed in
Right.
on that Arkansas team. He would have been really fun next to Darius Acuff running the wings and getting up opposite Billy Richmond, and
Right.
because he catches a ton of oops and whatnot. But um, playing next to Jordan Smith and Billy Richmond and being sandwiched in between those guys, I think is really an interesting fit, and I think he's going to be important because Jordan Smith doesn't have the reputation as a shooter. You and I both got a chance to spend some time in May with Billy Richmond
Right.
and talk to him, and we watched him shoot a ton of jumpers
Yeah.
and watch him work, and I think it looked better. than it did during last season. And even last season, I don't think his shot like aesthetically was like, oh, this is unfixable. But
Right.
he's got to prove it, in real games that he's making those improvements, right? I think out of those three guys, like Torre's shooting is the most bankable
Mm,
potentially
yeah.
out of those three guys. Now, their games, I mean, if you watch Hoop Hall, like he was hitting everything. He
Yeah.
had some monster scoring games. And he hits tough shots, like, but he gets them up at volume. Uh, it can feel a little like J.R. Smithy at times where it's like almost heat checky. And maybe it could be hot or cold, but I think that as far as like shooting goes, a lot of that has to do with maybe shot selection. I think as a pure shooter, I feel pretty confident in him that he's going to be a guy that is going to knock down threes for that Arkansas team in that backcourt or on that wing, and I think that that's going to be important for them.
When you mentioned like the J.R. Smith comp, right? I think if we take that even like to a more granular level, J.R. Smith's tendencies on a basketball court, a lot of that, or almost all of it, was rooted in confidence. He was a guy who was
Oh yeah.
fully confident in himself, right? As you know, Nick fans, we watched him do so much of that, and sometimes it was diabolically bad, but a lot of times it was great, and he was a huge part of the success that version of the Knicks team had. I think that's an important comp because when you watch Torrey on the floor, he has confidence. He exudes confidence on the floor, and a guy who's sure of himself. And when you look at his numbers, and I get it, it's like high school level, but in his senior year, he was like just under 25 points a game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. I think he was like 70% from the floor overall and like over 40% from three. Like, I think that's good. That's really, really good. And I get it. Like that type of efficiency, you take that with a grain of salt. But if you watch the film, you mentioned some of the tough shots he's taken and making. And I was having a conversation without disclosing who. I was talking to like a 5-star player's parent early this morning, actually, and they were telling me that they were working out with a shooting coach, blah blah blah, and they were saying that so much of shooting is between the ears,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's in the head, and the confidence piece is pretty much everything. And I couldn't agree with them more. And I was telling them how we've had conversations with guys like John Poulikitis and other great shooters, and their emphasis is always on confidence. And
Mm-hmm.
so when it comes to Torre and even your J.R. Smith comp before, you look at J.R. Smith's jumper, beautiful form, dude.
One of the
J.R.
prettiest jumpers ever,
Yeah, ever. And it
ever.
wasn't just like, he's a chucker. His form was beautiful. I think Tori's got a good looking form too, and he's got the confidence to match. And what I was telling that parent this morning was that's kind of why I was never a real believer in Amen Thompson as a shooter,
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of the points that we made on our pod back in that time during that class where it was like he didn't take a lot of them, and we could see that he didn't have the confidence, and so he's got to build up that confidence to get there to hopefully become a good to great shooter one day. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet. And when it comes to Torre, I think once again, the launch pad for him is great because he has belief in himself.
Yeah, I mean the belief is ever present. And a lot of the guys who I comped him to share that kind of self belief. And we can I guess touch on that towards the end of the segment, but I think that like with the shot itself, one of the things like that makes it so hard to guard too is he gets a ton of elevation on it. And like even out to three, like in the mid range, a lot of guys will jump a little higher and get, but he gets a ton of elevation. Um, and like you said, it's pretty smooth, like energy transfer, and he's confident. He'll take some tough shots and he'll make tough shots. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. I mean, it the something that stands out is when we were at the Hoop Summit with Torre, and I was filming him after one of the practices at I think it was Coach K gym on the Nike campus. Um,
I think it
maybe it
was
was the
Bo Jackson.
maybe it was the okay, it was the Bo Jackson gym.
Yeah.
Um, he saw me filming and he was shooting with somebody else. I don't remember who it was, maybe Adam Tomna, I don't remember. And they were like alternating, like Toure shoots, next guy shoots, and he saw me filming. He knocked one down. He turns to the camera, and he's like, "I'm gonna give you another one." His turn to shoot, knocks it down, turns at the camera. I'm gonna give you another one, and he did that for like 10
Yeah.
shots, and it was just like that's you see that confidence, that bravado. out of
Mm.
him, that self-belief, which was cool. I also like that he could fit off the ball. For as good
Yeah.
as he is kind of as a scorer, it doesn't necessarily feel like he's dominating
Mhm.
usage and possessions. Like I love that Notre Dame would run the what I always call the Jimmy Butler play, where it's the Bulls always ran it for Jimmy Butler early in his career to get him like a lob dunk. It comes off
Mm.
like a back screen at the
Yes.
elbow, and then he would go up and get a lob dunk. Uh, so I call it a Butler cut, and he would Notre Dame would try to get Toure that same look a lot of times, but yeah, he's like an active cutter. He's always like if he's on the weak side corner, and the defense kind of loses sight of him. He's always cutting baseline, looking
Mm.
for those oops as well. Obviously, going to be a monster in transition, like running the floor. And then I thought his playmaking was kind of interesting. I think at times he gets a little loose and lazy, especially like when teams would press and he would like try to throw across the court like 40 feet. Um, and some of the turnovers would come from that, or he would like try to fit the ball in a window that was like not necessarily there. But teams really respect his jumper, and he gets a lot of he finds his teammates for a lot of good looks by rising up, getting guys to bite and think he's shooting the jumper, and then firing in like a ball, opening up the windows with his jump passes. And then you know, I think he has some nice reactive passes, just like getting into the paint, drop offs. He had this nice uh like wraparound corner pass like in the
Yep.
paint, and he's pretty good at like staying balanced because once he's like in between the free throw line and the semicircle, he plays off too. Um, I don't think he's gonna be like a primary playmaker or anything, but there was enough flashes there where I was like, oh wow, that was cool that he has that. And it's more than just like he's just a scorer type of guy, which I think for his archetype. But we're talking about Abdou Toure, who's headed to Arkansas. Not all of the guys who play like him necessarily have like at least a little bit of playmaking juice. Like I don't want him running point guard,
Mm.
but I think he has a little bit more than just like, oh, this is a connective piece. And if an NBA team were to be in a position where they were like early in a rebuild, you can allow him to, kind of
Grow.
to grow and test the waters a little bit and see where it goes. Even again, because one of my very high end comps for him is a guy like Jalen Brown.
That okay. Let me just pause you just for a second, just because you bringing that up is hilarious for me. Because what I wanted to touch on was the one thing on his film that I wanted to address. I want to say this. You started off his scouting report today by saying swingman. And it's funny
Mm,
because that's like a term we don't hear a lot anymore
no,
in the NBA. And it's cool. It's a little token, a little marker to our age, which is okay. When you say swingman, I think of, Latrell Sprewell and Grant Hill and those types of guys.
yeah,
But
Vince Carter,
Vince Carter, right? All those guys, J.R. Ryder, whatever.
Mitch
Um,
Richmond.
we should play this game one day. But when I
Eddie
watched
Jones.
Torre, that might be the best one. Watching him at the Hoop Summit, the thing that I enjoyed about his game a lot was that he really embraced not having to have the ball in his hands
Yeah.
all the time. He really was like, I could play off ball, I can cut, I can do stuff on the floor that where I'm going to continue to create impact and leave my print on this game, which I loved a lot. The one thing that I did notice was, and you mentioned some of like the playmaking stuff. He can get a little lackadaisical out at times. Shouts to Clyde Frazier for that one. But I thought his handle sometimes was a little loose and sometimes a little bit high. And I think when you brought up the Jalen Brown comp, I was like, that might be why I felt that way. Where it was like, there are times where his handle does look slick and it looks good and it
Hmm.
helps him get into tough shots, but also sometimes he can get a little high with his handle. I thought not as like locked in and tight as you want on the ball.
I think
So
he's
that'll
got
be something
Jalen
to.
Brown hips.
Oh, well, maybe that's what. Okay, that's probably what it is.
It's like
But
kind of like tight. Like,
hmm
I mean, he's like it's weird because they're both flexible guys, but I
yeah,
think it's just like the kinesthetics of the
yeah,
body because of how they're
yeah.
built. Is it's like they did the most with the flexibility that they can, but
Right.
it's like up to a point with where it can get just because of how
Right.
they're built.
Maybe. Not, so I definitely agree with that. And one last thing that I wanted to throw in, because you mentioned it, and it's something that I saw live in person last week that really blew me away. So I actually hadn't talked about this, but I went to a workout last Friday with Yegor Diomin and Nick Kamenia. And this is not me to disparage one guy or the other, but the one thing that I noticed while watching them shoot, right? You mentioned the kinesthetics, the energy transfer in the body. Watching Yegor Diomin shoot, I was like, this is what it's supposed to look like. The energy transfer between his lower body to his hips, to his back, to his whole upper body going up, that transfer and that motion was so smooth and fluid and coordinated and pretty. I was like, this is why you're a good shooter. And to your point about Toure, I think that looks good with him. But there's something about it when you see it up close and personal, you understand it. And not only is it smooth and fluid, but it happens again and again and again. Like the repetitive nature of it being consistent and the same every single time was so impressive to watch with him. And also even Nick Kamenia too. Like I want to say heading into this, I'm excited to see his growth. So going back to Abdou Toure, there is a kinetic chain with him as a shooter that's impressive to me. I want the handle to be a little bit tighter. I agree with you on the playmaking. There's some stuff there, but that's something that we're going to have to see him to continue to develop kind of as like a secondary ball handler, tertiary
Yes,
ball
no
handler for
doubt about
Arkansas
that.
this season.
No
Yeah.
doubt about that. I don't
Yeah.
want it to be misconstrued. Like I
Right.
think he is somebody who, if he is the guy who's like running your team and making those decisions, I don't think that's going to be a
Right.
super successful team. And I think you need those kind of ball handlers, and I think they're important. And I think that's maybe why there might be a renaissance for, these point guards who are showing value again because they're necessary in that regard. Defensively, um, super disruptive.
Yeah.
Like he blocks a ton of shots because he can really get up and he gets up quick. Um, he had 6 blocks against Inglewood, playing against Jason Crow.
Hmm.
He's got really good timing on contests. A lot of his blocks come on like against jump shooters,
Hmm. High
which,
point. Yeah.
yeah, like really interesting because he's got like good length, almost a 6'10" wingspan. Again, he gets up off the ground quick. Um, but when he's guarding, I feel like a lot of times, and again, like I don't want to say he's not engaged
Mm.
defensively, but and a lot of times in high school, it's not like you're looking for Abdou Toure and being like, let's go at him. Like you're going to want to go at some of his teammates who aren't
Yep.
ridiculous athletes. But when he is guarding the ball, in his high school film, I oftentimes felt like he was kind of like guarding back, not getting up into their shirts, not being aggressive, not making guys make decisions. He was just kind of like playing prevent defense.
Mm.
And I think in the Hoop Summit game that we
Yep.
were at, he showed a lot more aggressiveness. I
Yeah.
think they needed to. I think he's got a really good motor, so I think it's in there. And I we're guilty of this as well. I think a lot of people are just like, man, the U.S. team is gonna wallop the world team because
Right.
I don't know if they have the ball handlers to break the press. And Miles Sadler did that, and they went away from it. But like Toure is a big reason, along with Sadler, that the hoop the
Yes.
world team was even in that Hoop Summit game. Like Toure was very consistent. He made a lot of big plays, and I think defensively he was really interesting. Um, so I think playing next to, like, on this Arkansas team, playing next to Jordan Smith, playing next to Billy Richmond, guys who really get after it defensively, I think there's a like he it might rub off on him. And we might see a more aggressive version, but I think at times if you watch a high school film, you're not going to get as excited about his on-ball defense because he's kind of just playing prevent defense.
To your point though, and this is something that we've said for years on this pod, is sometimes we take the high school tape with a grain of salt. And there are a lot of different reasons for that. Whether we talk about context, the level of team they're playing against, or it's a point that you make all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's part of it with Torre. The most important thing that we can, maybe it's not the most important, but it's something that weighs, I think, heavily on both of us because we were there, was what he did at the Hoop Summit. To your point, like he was getting after it, and especially in that second half where they had to fight back to stay competitive in that game, he was a huge part of that turnaround. Like I remember several moments in that second half where we're turning to each other and we're going, "Damn, like Torre is like really leaving his mark on this game." Like whether it was a big time block or a steal or him running out in transition and finishing through contact or whatever. Like there were a lot of things that he brought in that second half that were huge. And to your point earlier about the timing of his shot blocking, like a lot of these guys that jump high, we go like, "Oh, they'd be good at volleyball." I don't think that's necessarily true because I think with volleyball you kind of have to have that timing down and know like when to high point balls and stuff. Torre's got that. Like you
Yeah.
see that on blocks with how he does such a good job of being anticipatory and then exploding when he needs to get the ball at the highest point and not have it be a goaltend. I think he does a really really good job with that. And something that I wanted to mention earlier on the offense that I forgot to mention, he's nasty on the offensive boards too, and
Yeah.
he can bring it on the defensive end as well. As he averaged 7 rebounds last year in high school. I like to see him continue to tap into that because the type of athleticism that he has, if he gets a rebound and pushes it the other way, there's a lot of really interesting early offense stuff that he can create just on his own by, continuing to have a strong emphasis on the board. So as a defender, I'm with you. He's got the tools, 6'9" wingspan at his size is definitely beneficial to him, but also he's got a great frame to him that he's going to continue to add to with that plus plus almost maybe elite. I know. I think it's fair to say elite athleticism. He can be a really special defender if he just shows that all the time. And I think both of us believe that he can get there.
Yeah, he can get there. So let's talk some prospect chemistry. We mentioned J.R. Smith, we mentioned Jalen Brown. Were there any other guys who came to mind for you when you were watching? Where like, oh, I could see this part of his game in this player.
To be honest, like because of where I have him and where I was thinking about him after doing the deep dive, you mentioned him earlier. The Jalen Brown one did come to mind for me just because if I'm thinking about taking a guy like Toure in the top three, which my brain kind of went to after doing the film deep dive and after having watching him in person as well, I was like, if you're gonna take him in the top three, that's kind of how you have to dream about him.
Yeah,
That has to kind of be the projection. And is if I'm taking Abdou Toure in the top three, I want him to develop, not be from day one, but I want him to develop into some version of that where he can be like a Jalen Brown, where I could potentially build a young roster with two high end wings that could lead my team to something like the Killer Bees in Boston did,
mhm.
right? Like that's kind of what you're aiming for and what you're hoping for. So I actually think that's a really good one and kind of where my brain went to as well.
Yeah, and I feel like, and obviously we're remembering back a long time. Jalen Brown went third. You know,
Yeah.
um, I feel like Jamal Murray was penciled into that slot, and a lot of mocks. Jalen Brown was actually more in like the seven-ish
Yep.
range.
Yep.
Um, and I think like Boston, obviously, ideal developmental situation with Brad
Right.
Stevens, and you had Isaiah Thomas there early on to kind of shoulder a lot of the offensive load and let these guys kind of just be versions of themselves where they didn't have pressure to be the guy despite them being drafted high, but
Right.
also like a little bit of room to experiment and develop because Brad Stevens is awesome. But some other guys who were drafted high that I could see a little bit of Toure in, like I think there's a world this year where he looks a lot like VJ Edgecombe did in college. Um, and as like kind of like an energy hustle, but can do some stuff in transition and is going to be able to do some stuff in the half court and maybe the jumper streaky. Although I think Touré's jumper maybe I have a little bit more confidence in than I did
Yep.
VJ's coming in, even though I thought VJ was like a fine shooter.
Right.
So maybe like that could also be like a play style that I could see him succeeding in the league if he buys into that kind of guy. But then there are outcomes also where it's like it could be Shaden Sharp. Maybe the playmaking actually isn't there,
Mm.
and he's more of just like a fill it up, cool dunk guy, who is inconsistent on defense, depending where he would end up in the NBA. And then it's similar along similar lines. Maybe a guy like Ben Mathurin, who's another fantastic athlete who could shoot and has all of these tools, but doesn't put it together. I think that's why fit and it is so important. But I like that he's going to play for Cal this year in this system, and I think we're going to see a version of him that could really entice teams.
I think if I had to give a '90s comp, I actually mentioned him earlier when we were fooling around, but maybe a Latrell Sprewell could be
Mm,
an interesting comp for him too. If you think about Sprewell in those '90s, early 2000s years, great athlete, unbelievable in transition, was super influential defensively as well. A guy who could really get after it, and was a guy who could be like a dueling banjos type of offensive player who, as a swingman, could go and get you buckets, but also didn't have to have the ball in his hands all the time. Obviously, you take away the off the court stuff, or maybe technically on the court stuff with PJ Carlissimo, but you get rid of that stuff, and there's something there with him. And I think with Abdou Toure, the thing with Toure is that I think I believe in him a little bit more as a shooter than Sprewell. But then also, if you think about Sprewell in 2026, maybe he would have embraced the outside jumper a little bit more because he was never a bad shooter. He had some
no.
actually pretty decent shooting
When I think of him in
seasons.
Minnesota and New York, I don't
Right.
maybe streaky, but it's not
Yeah.
a guy that you would be like he needs to
No.
improve
No.
this area to
Right.
open up everything. Yeah.
Yeah. He had some big shooting games for the Knicks. Yeah. So I agree.
Yeah. All right. We are gonna hit a quick break, and on the other side, we're gonna get to nothing but net rating, a player who has a very intriguing statistical profile. So that is coming up next. All right, we are back, and we're talking a little Sam Orme for nothing but net rating. Okay, so this is a segment where we look at a college prospect statistical profile and make a case on why he might be a draft prospect. So Sam Orme is headed to Nebraska this year. He's a junior, came over transferring from Belmont, who had a ton of interesting prospects last year, like a bunch of guys who were going to play in the league. Uh, Orme is going to be 22.6 years old on draft night because I believe he redshirted his freshman season, and he's listed. So we'll see on Nebraska's site. He's listed at 6'10", 220. I believe the 220. We'll see with the 6'10". I
Yeah.
think he was listed at 6'9" on Belmont's site. So, who knows? Maybe he grew. But Orme is a really interesting player who has popped up in some really interesting, maybe my favorite Bart query that I've ever done. But I'm going to give you two. Okay. So I
Okay.
headed to Bart Torvik to find an interesting, some interesting prospects. And Orme showed up in a couple because he's a guy who takes threes. He dunks the ball. He has some feel, defensively disruptive. So here's the first one. Okay. We are looking at assist percentage over 10, 3-point percentage over 36, 3-point per 100 over 6, made 35 threes, dunked it 25 times. This is for last year's class 2026 prospects. Sam Orme, Cameron Carr,
Hmm.
Yaxel Lindeborg,
Hmm.
Cameron Boozer. 3 first-round picks.
Yep. And Sam Arm.
And Sam Orme from last year.
Yeah.
Then, and this is my favorite, okay, because this goes back to 2028. Now I'm looking for wing size players, so it's players that are 6'5" and up.
Okay.
Okay, so we have assist percentage over 10, assist to turnover ratio greater than 1, 3-point percentage greater than 36, 3-pointers per 100 greater than 6, 3-pointers made greater than 40, dunks made 25 or more, BPM above 5. There are 22 players on the list, including Sam Orme. 20 out of 21 of those players, excluding Sam Orme, who's still in college. So 20 out of 21 played in the NBA by hitting that threshold. I don't want to list all of them because it'll take a while, but you're looking at guys like Boozer, Keegan Murray, Cooper Flagg, Chet Holmgren, Mikal Bridges, Lonzo Ball, Devin Vassell, Miles Bridges. And then there's role players, so you have your David Roddies, your Dylan Windlers, Kobe Browns, Dalton Connect. So it's not saying necessarily with this statistical query, it's not saying this is going to be a good NBA player. But it is saying that you got a pretty damn good chance of making it to the league. some would say a 20 and 21, whatever percentage that is, of
It's
making
got to
it
be
to the league.
90 something percent.
It's
Yeah.
a pretty high. If you touch those numbers, you have a pretty high chance. And it's mid-major guys, high-major guys, so there's a lot in there. Um, and I think Sam Orme has a really good shot. I mean, I think he's getting an NBA shot. He's touching an NBA floor. Um, we'll see. I'm gonna be straight up. I have no idea about eligibility rules anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He might have 4 years left to play in college. He might be done after this year. I don't know. Okay. But at some point, he's touching league, and I think he rocks as a player, despite the fact that his game is not super sexy.
Mm.
So I'm excited to see him in the Big Ten this year.
I think okay, so this is the part where we get into the game a little bit, right?
Yes.
And I think um I hate to say this, right? Because whenever we talk about like white guys, we go, sneaky athletic, whatever. But I'm watching his film and I'm like, sneaky athletic is right. Like there's no other way to put it. Like you see him running up and down the court, you're like, oh, okay, like, seems like, he belongs. And then he gets downhill and he's like, what
Yeah.
is he doing? Why
With a
is
runway,
he
he can get up with a runway.
yeah, I'm like, why is he exploding at the rim, two-hand jamming it with his eyes like at eye level at the rim? I'm like, this is crazy. Like I was really shocked. So sneaky athletic, I want to throw that in there. Jumper looks good. The thing that kind of surprised me when I was watching his film was some of the passing stuff with him. I was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying he's a
He's not running
primary
ball.
creator.
No, he's not running
No,
ball screens.
no.
I have the number, like, as a self creator, he ran 3 ISOs last year.
Sure, right.
So
But there
that's not what you're giving him. You're not. That's not
yeah.
his job.
Yeah, but there's some like interesting like high low stuff with him, and like
Yes.
sometimes like they throw the ball to him like in a little post, and drops. He sees Cutter coming back
Yep.
door, drops a little bounce pass. I'm like, oh, he's a basketball player, right? And he plays hard. He's got a little chip on his shoulder, a little nasty streak to him that you wouldn't expect. And once again, like there's some real athleticism, and also you see it on the defensive end too. Some of the blocks in his film reel, I'm like, oh, dang, like
Yeah.
you're getting after it. So
Career
th-
2 steal, career 4 block
yeah, like there's
percentage.
some really intriguing stuff. Now, the one thing that I know that you looked at that you didn't love, I think he was like 64% from the line,
Yeah.
60 something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I
eighty
mean, low
percent, eighty
volume.
percent from, and that's the thing. It's low volume because he was eighty
Yeah,
percent his freshman year. So I
right.
think he's probably somewhere in between, and that is part of his game that I think he does need to get better is playing
Yes.
with more physicality at the rim. Now he finished when he's putting rim attempts up because he's really intentional about the shots that he takes because he wants to
Hmm.
get good looks. He was over 70% at the rim, whether it was in the half court or overall. So this is a guy who finishes efficiently at the rim, but he's not gonna like go up, get into your body, try to grift a foul.
Sure.
He's gonna take kind of shots that are efficient and open. And I think that that's one of the things because he is big, he is strong. Get fouled, get to the free throw line a little bit is something that I would like. Now, just quickly on his shot though. So he was 39.5% last year on 119 catch and shoot attempts. He took 6 dribble jumpers last season with Belmont. So this is not somebody again who's doing any kind of self creation from the perimeter. He can leverage that to get downhill, attack a closeout, and like that's where his self creation comes from. But it's not going to be like let him dance with the rock. Solid base, feet shoulder width apart. I like that. Gets a little bit of elevation, smooth, high, repeatable release, good follow through, high arcing ball. This is all good stuff. But his when he goes up, he doesn't come to like an extension with his legs, and there's like this bend in his knees that are so he's like it
Mm,
just looks stiff a little bit
mm,
with the jumper. Now, the results are what they are. He took a lot of threes. They went in, but I think there's room even for him to improve as a shooter by just unstiffening his lower body. And I think that'll make him a little bit more versatile because he is mostly taking spot ups. I mean, he knows when to flatten, he knows when to, pop up to the wing. Some basic movement stuff. But for the most part, it's a lot of like spot up stuff, beat a guy to a spot in transition. And I feel good about it. and I like that he can kind of attack, and he can move the ball and make a quick decision when somebody rotates, all that stuff. But where there's that inconsistency in the shooting, there is a few mechanical tweaks that I think are easily workable and fixable if he's open to it, that will allow him to kind of be a better, more consistent shooter.
When you talked about his lower half not extending, I thought about what you meant, and I think I found it. If you've ever played Wii Sports basketball and you watch how they shoot, he kind of looks like that. There's something a little mechanical, not super pretty about. I get what you're saying. Like it's kind of like his legs kind of bend and then they stay bent
They
in
stay
the air,
bent.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it's strange. It's very strange, but it reminded me of Wii Sports basketball. I think it's
Yeah.
like the resort one where you can play shooting.
Because
That's
those
what it kind of
characters
looks
are
like.
not anatomically correct. They're like they're like cartoon block, kind of like.
Exactly, exactly. So Sam Orm, we want you to be anatomically correct.
Yeah.
Is the point here if you're
We
listening?
do. We certainly
But no,
do.
I think we're both believers. And the one thing I did want to say about him, the last thing about him offensively, is that the one thing that I liked about him though is when he attacks closeouts. Sometimes when guys attack closeouts and they get bumped off of their line, they'll kind of allow it and they'll just kind of give up and they'll retreat. I like that on his film, there were a lot of drives where Orm, even after that initial bump where he might be kind of diverted from the original line that he's trying to take, he doesn't quit and he keeps going because he understands the advantage that he's created with the hard closeout, and he tries to fight through to keep going, and then he gets downhill. It's a small thing that I noticed, but I was like, there are some guys who don't have the courage or the willpower to keep going, and they'll just kind of retreat. And I like that he didn't have that. Was one plus I wanted to give him.
But I think that holds up on the defensive end too.
Hmm.
I defensively, I love his game. I think he is a brilliant defender. Now, when we're talking about some of the on the ball stuff, like I think he's switchable, but not like somebody who
Yeah.
you want to be guarding point guards. He's not going to be your primary matchup. You're like, yeah, let's sick him on the point guard, but he switches. Like, hey, that's fine. He's going to battle. He sits in his stance. He gets long. Sometimes he plays a little flat and he lets quicker guys dictate the possession. That could be schematic thing at Belmont. I don't know. I'd have to talk to the coaching staff. But on drives, when he's guarding drives, similar to him, he's able to absorb bumps, and he does a good job of keeping on the line of the driver, and then like using his length to kind of contest off of those drives. So that's like on the ball stuff. Now, I think that in we talked about Luigi Swigo on the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings feed. And one of the things we said is like his feet can get stuck in mud a little bit when he has to make like a second effort in a different direction.
Right.
Orm's feet don't get stuck in mud quite as much as like a guy like Swigo, who's significantly bigger. But Sam Orm, his feet do get a little heavy-footed, stuck in mud, when he is guarding like a quick action, but nothing to where it's like breaking down the defense necessarily. Like I could, and because I think he positions himself so well that he makes it, he allows himself to recover in situations because I think he knows his game. But that's kind of like the thing that I would say is the most debilitating to his defense, which I think is excellent, is just like sometimes his feet are a little heavy footed.
But the one counter to that I want to add, and I think you just alluded to it too. I think there's positioning stuff with him that's good, but also he has, we talked about the athleticism. It applies here too because he has good recovery speed. You watch some of the plays where he gets kind of crossed up and he's going the wrong way. He doesn't quit on the play, which you love to see, doesn't quit, fights back, uses his speed to recover, and then he's another guy like Abdou Toure, who we talked about earlier. He's got good anticipation and timing on his blocks. He
Yeah.
does a really good job of using his length, timing his blocks at a good time, and using that length to really kind of reach around. I think to your point, there is something there with him where yes, you wish he was a little bit more fleet of foot, but to his credit, he does try to compensate that with good positioning and then reacting quickly and then using some of that athleticism to kind of burst and to catch up again and use the length to contest shots at the rim or whatever. So to your point, I think with him there's some really good fundamentals that he's working off of, but also he's got some good instincts as well that I
Yeah.
think is great for him.
And then off the ball, he is I feel like he never makes mistakes. I feel like he's
Mhm.
always in the right spot. His back is flat to the basket when his move is moving on. Man's moving off the ball. His head's on a swivel. He's very touchy when his man is like like when he's focused on the ball and his man is around him. Like when he's in like the paint, he's always kind of got a hand on him, so he kind of knows where he's going and he can't kind of get like backdoor cut. Um, High hands, choppy feet on closeouts, like and does a really good job of getting vertical and absorbing contact at the rim when he is contesting and he isn't trying to make um a block a shot at the rim. So this is just a dude who in my mind like he keeps things flowing, the offense hums, the defense hums. You never have to worry about him kind of stepping out of his comfort zone in a way that's going to cause a break in the offense or the defense. And look, I actually would like to see him be a little more aggressive offensively and not just kind of like and kind of impact his will on the game sometimes. But he knows his role. He knows how to play off of other guys. He knows how to make quick point five decisions. He's just smart and he's got real size. So whether he's listed at 6, 10 and he actually measures that or not, like if he's 6'8", 6'9", for him, I don't think it matters all that much. Being 6'10" is cool, but like I don't think it matters all that much. And I could see him, being a Jake LaRavia type in
Mhm.
the NBA. I could see him being like off-brand Alan Graves. Um, I don't think he's quite the shooter, but like a Sam Hauser kind of guy. Or if
Mhm.
you liked Alex Caravan, like I
Mm.
think he there's some Caravan in there. So he's like not gonna be a star. He's certainly gonna be a role player, but I think he will star in whatever role he plays.
Maybe a Dean Wade,
Yeah,
maybe.
sure.
Yeah,
Good
someone
call.
like that. Yeah, good, similar size, but yeah,
Yes.
these guys are very important to the NBA game. They're necessary. You're not grabbing these guys to be stars at all, but you need them to fill your roster. And even that sounds like I'm putting him down, but no, you like it's hard to make an NBA roster, guys. Like
Mm.
don't get it twisted. And if Orm continues to be the type of shooter that we think he can be, and then offer the stuff that he because look when you're looking at players like this, the ultimate question is can he play in a 7 game series? Can
Mhm.
he impact winning in a 7 game series? I think both of us are landing where we think he can. And now that he's at Nebraska, he's going to be able to show that at a higher level. I'm really enticed to see what that looks like this season. And if he continues to show what he's been showing and develops even more, we might be talking about like in the 20s you take this guy and you feel good about it because he's going to be a rotational player for you and he's got good size for the position and the type of role that you need him to play. He can make a ton of sense.
Yeah, especially in this class. So
Right.
I think that Sam Orm, headed to Nebraska via Belmont this year, is a guy that you should have on your radar um, because you can appreciate his game whether you are watching it or you're looking at the spreadsheet. So Sam Orm, Nebraska, jot him down. And when we come back, we will be hitting some NBA breakouts. That is coming up on the other side. All right, we are back talking NBA breakouts. We are looking at year two guys, sophomore breakouts, and we're going to talk about Jeremiah Fears from the New Orleans Pelicans, who was a top 10 pick in his draft, measured at 6'2.5" without shoes, so he will be somewhere in the 6'3" to 6'4" range. He's listed at 190 pounds. And, he was a guy who I believe reclassed late and like went into college, had some monster games early, popped up on the radar, became a little inconsistent,
Hmm.
but ultimately, kind of turned it around again, finished strong, ended up as a top 10 pick because he has some unteachable tools. And he ends up in New Orleans, and that draft in particular for the Pelicans obviously is going to go down, or could have gone down in infamy based on what the lottery results were. They ended up not, losing out too much because they took Jeremiah Fears with their first pick and then traded for Derek Queen, who, in watching Jeremiah Fears tape again, I'm like, man, I really like what I see from Derek Queen.
Derek Queen.
But we're talking Jeremiah Fears, and I thought he looked like prepared for the NBA, like as prepared for the NBA as he looked for college. Like he doesn't look out of place on the court. I was a little disappointed that both he and Derek Queen did not play in summer league. I think they both could have used it, despite the fact that like Jeremiah Fears finished his last 5 games of his season with like multiple 30-point games, a 40-point game, right? Finished strong, but still, I think those off-season reps are valuable. And but I don't know. I'm pretty excited to see what year 2 looks like, despite the fact that I myself, like many, don't necessarily have a firm grasp on the direction of the New Orleans Pelicans overall.
For me, when I started my deep dive on his rookie season, the first thing that I have in my notes that I keep thinking back to is what you said at Summer League when you're like, I really hate that he's not playing here. Same thing with Derek Queen. And I think with me, I leaned heavier towards Fears needing to play and needing to be. He was there, but him not playing really bothered me because when I watched his rookie year film, the highlights are very enticing. Like you cannot deny that there's something here with him, and there's a reason why he got drafted where he got drafted. But also, to be fair, you and I were not his biggest fan in that class. Like I think both of us.
I would say we understood the upside,
Yes.
and we thought that there was some risk
Yes.
within it because I didn't feel like he was as much of a sure thing as some of the other prospects in his class could be. So like the risk meter, with him, I was like, there's some risk here, despite the very obvious ceiling.
Right. And even amongst our No Ceilings collective, like, we were not the highest. And, we had a lot of intense conversations about that, even internally amongst our No Ceilings crew. And I think watching his rookie year film, there's definitely some good, right? And the thing with him is he is such you mentioned he doesn't look out of place. There's a confidence to this guy. And it shows in a lot of different ways when it comes to his shot selection, when it comes to his aggression, even though he's not like fully built out yet in terms of his physique. Like there's some really tenacious, tough plays that you like, right? And you mark that in your notes and you go, that's a good plus for him.
Growing up with his brother,
yeah,
who Jeremy Fears Jr., who plays at Michigan State, you can see how they probably had some competitive battles.
Yeah. And a lot of, getting in people's faces and wanting to go because, he's a tough competitor. That's great. For me, though, if I get into like some of the nitty gritty with him, I thought his shot selection was like a nightmare at times. And look, I want to put a disclaimer. My desire today is not to bash on Jeremiah Fears. I want to just note these things because I also, like you, believe in his ability. Like there's so much talent there. I want to see him great. But there were a couple of games that I watched and I was like, man.
Can I make a quick retort on that?
Sure.
I think it's the Pelican shot selection that was a nightmare.
Okay.
Like from Jordan Poole pull-ups early in the clock, like walking in the half court where no one touches it, to whatever else. I think it was overall like a team issue. Like I don't think there was a structure there.
Okay.
And this is one of my big things. Like I look at them going out, getting Mathurin. Look, they got Mathurin on a good deal. The right deal, right? But are you putting together the right players around him? Like Benedict Mathurin does not move you any closer to anything. Maybe you flip him for some seconds, but what's the point? You're taking away shots from the players that I think you want to build around. I, I don't get it. Like, why aren't you targeting guys like Colin Gillespie, who's a free agent?
Mm,
Why aren't you targeting other guys like, I don't know, the Jones, any of the Jones brothers, like guys who are going to add more structure? Where are the veterans? Like I like that they brought in Kevin Looney, right? Um, even if he's not exactly the ideal guy, but why aren't you bringing in guys who fit around the players that you're actually trying to build around so that you can have some structure? Like, why did Andre Miller play for 1,000 years, right?
mm.
Because he ran a team. You can learn from guys like that. I remember growing up watching the Bulls, and they trade for Antonio Davis and PJ Brown, and they bring in professionals
Kurt
like the
Thomas.
Kurt Tom. Like the NBA used to be where these veterans really provided veteran leadership and some structure on the court as extensions of what was going on off of it. And it's like I understand that Trey Murphy and Herb Jones now are considered vets and Zion's been in the league for a long time. But these are all guys who grew up in this system and infrastructure. They have not yet learned
Mm.
how to win and how to structure things, right? So like I think it was a structural issue with basically everything that happens on the court because yeah, like Jeremiah Fears, he definitely walks the ball up the court sometimes and he sees Jordan Poole pull up from 3, so why can't I pull up from 3? I'm a top 10 pick. But I think it was structural because overall, like if you look at him as a decision maker, 2.8 assist to turnover ratio. I thought he showed some nuance in ball screens. Definitely took some shots that he doesn't need to. But like, and look, I in talking about this and breaking it down, I don't think that this stuff improves next year for New Orleans
Yeah.
necessarily. Although, the coaching change, maybe that part of it becomes a little more structured. I'm hoping. Um, but I do think it was structural more than like this is how he's gonna play
Mm.
forever.
Okay. That's fair. It's just for me watching some of it, I flat out hated some of it, and something that I didn't, something that I want to kind of get more of your perspective on as well is like the outside jumper was a question for me,
Mhm.
when he was in that draft class, and I feel like it's still a question for me. I felt like it was pretty inconsistent. I have to, I just don't know where that's going to end up. The one thing that I really enjoyed, and before I hand it over to you, the thing that I really did enjoy though is like the way that he would attack switches. I was like, oh, this is great. Like I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
Like
he's a speed
if
demon.
man, but also like there are times like where when you get like a guard who gets switched and there's a big on him and they don't take advantage of their
Mhm.
speed advantage, and that
Right.
bothers me so much. And I felt like Fears did a really good job of being like, if you put a big on me, I'm gonna punish him every single time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wrote in my notes. I was like, I love that he has that mindset and that he took advantage because some of the blow bys that he had against bigs were like electric, where he's literally leaving them in the dust. And I thought that was really, really good. And I think overall, just I think for me, and this probably goes back to your earlier point about context and everything, but there is this, in my opinion, a maturation that needs to come with him. I
Sure.
thought at times some of the body language wasn't my favorite. I think at times some of the decision making, shot selection stuff wasn't my favorite. And to your point, there is going to be a concern. And you mentioned Kevon Looney; he's not even there anymore now, right?
Right.
He just left for
Yeah.
the Lakers, so that hurts them even more. And I'm just like, man, do they have the veteran leadership around him to make him better this season? I'm not sure. And so for me, like when I like bird's eye view, when I look at like my overall feeling about Fears, is I have some concern
Mhm.
about will he ever reach that ceiling that we think that he has. um I'm a little worried is kind of how I walked away from
I
it.
I actually walked away a lot more confident.
Okay.
I Again though, like it's what with all of their interesting players, what's the narrative? How do we get them away from New Orleans? So, and they hold on to guys
Yeah.
for a while. So I don't know necessarily what that looks like in the short term, but like I do see the vision a lot. When you talk about the shot, I here's what I have written down in my notes. Will the three ever go in at the rate to match the aesthetics of the shot? Because I think the shot looks really good. I do
Sure.
have a small mechanical tweak that I would say his release is a little low. He shoots it out instead of up, so I think more arc might really help him. He's been a good free throw shooter. I think he was like
Mm,
84% in college. He was
yeah.
right at 80% this year, but he was 32% overall and he was 33% on spot up. So like, there's a clear something. Like, does he just lack touch? I don't know. Um, but removing myself from like some of the shot selection, because I actually thought like the passing stuff, I thought his decision making was really rock solid. I think he makes some really nice reads, pass, live dribble, either hand. I like how he can stay patient at a ball screens. Like with young guys, I think it's really hard to not young guys who are as quick as him. I think it's really hard to not want to just blow by guys
Mm,
every time and get downhill. And I do think that like when he comes off a ball screen, he plays with good pace and like he has a second gear he could hit, but he's willing to just kind of like not rush it all the time. Um, so I think that, and also with a lot of these guys, you look at De'Aaron Fox's rookie year. You know, a lot of these really quick. It it takes them some time.
yeah.
You know, you could look at the impact metrics and all that, and none of it's going to be good. Um, but eventually they figure it out. And I do think that Fears is going to be on that path because his handle's ridiculous, his speed, like you mentioned, and I think it's a really important point where he gets a big and he's like, oh, I have to attack this because I think he struggles to finish near length at the rim right now, and he's
Hmm.
not strong enough all the time when he doesn't blow by somebody to like stay on his line when he gets bumped, and he throws up some garbage sometimes when he gets bumped off his line, and that's where he forces some stuff too. But I don't know. I did walk away pretty encouraged. I mean, defensively, look, you get him on a switch with a stronger guy, that's free cheese.
Yeah.
I don't even know how much better that could get. You know, he'll
Sure.
get a little stronger as he continues to mature because he is super young too. Like he's young for a
Yep.
rookie. He was young for a rookie. Um, but he doesn't have like a ton of vertical pop. I do thought, I saw some flashes, some stuff where I can look at on the ball and be like, okay, that was nice screen navigation, guarding Peyton Pritchard and getting over and staying attached and rear contesting. And I think he's capable when he's giving constant effort. Again, this goes back to the structure of like, is your organization going to be demanding this from everybody on the floor? And clearly the Pelicans haven't been. Uh, Off the ball is where it does look like he's thinking a lot out there.
Mm,
I think he looks engaged, but I think he looks in like doesn't know what to anticipate and when necessarily when he's got to like, scram switch or peel or something like that. So there's some stuff definitely where I'm like, all right, this is just going to be like you got to lock yourself and watch film and get with some of the coaches or your trainer or whoever and like focus on some of this stuff. But at the end of the day, I think that those are all like things that a lot of rookie guards like him go through.
mm.
But I think that there's enough like special there that it is really worth investing in, which is why it was so frustrating that they didn't play in summer league.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to reemphasize I'm not a Jeremiah Fears hater. I just, because he's got so much potential,
It's
maybe
okay
I'm
to be
being
skeptical. Zion didn't
right.
work there. Anthony Davis didn't work there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all right to be skeptical.
I really want him to be good. And it's not one of these things where I don't want him to be good. Like I want it to happen. You mentioned the jumper, Corey. Sometimes I'm like watching him shoot. I'm like, oh, you made a three, and then like you brick the next two off the front rim, and then the one right after is an air ball. I'm like let's find some consistency. I'm hoping he can figure it out because like you said, it looks really nice. And I think the point that you made about the pace that he plays with is a really important one because he can play that cat and mouse game coming off of a screen. He can put his man in jail, even like and another thing with him, like we mentioned earlier, he's not fully formed yet physically, but he does have like a physicality to him, a scrappiness to
Mm-hmm.
him that you like, right? And that's an important part. And so yes, I am a little critical of his game, but it's because I really think he could be really, really good. Even though I wasn't like super high on him in his draft class, there's a lot there's a lot of potential with his game, and then I just the career path will be an interesting one to monitor.
Yeah, because again, like they were already pretty loaded at the wings.
Yeah.
It's like Sadiq Bey, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. They add Ben Matherin, and the pieces don't to the puzzle don't fit. They have to move
Right.
some guys around. But then it's you look at a guy, it's like, all right, there's a lot of rumors about Trey Murphy, what he could fetch, and it's like,
Right.
oh, like he's gonna go for multiple first round picks, and I understand that you're young, you haven't won anything, you might
Right.
need to get that kind of value. That's cool, but also like, can we try to get some guys who make sense in certain spots? Like, can we try to get guys who fit? Can we try? Can we get some vets in? I don't know. That's my thing with New Orleans because I think they have so many fun pieces,
Yeah.
so many. But it just is it's weird, and I don't think they're going to be good. But I think that there's a real world where Fears does show a ton of improvement in year 2 and gears up for a very interesting year 3 or 4. There's also a world where the Pelicans keep pelicaning and it doesn't work, which would really bum me out because, you know, also I had a ton of Derek Queen stock and still have a
Yeah.
ton of Derek Queen stock, and he was third on my board in his draft year. And I'm super encouraged by a lot of what I've seen, and some of the stuff and the complaints that you had and we had for Fears, I likewise have for Queen. And I don't think that a lot of this stuff changes until there's real accountability. So we'll see what happens this year. But for now, it's the off season, and I can remain optimistic. So Jeremiah Fears too. I think he's going to make some big improvements. And when we come back from the break, we are going to hit a year 3 player who might be looking at a fun breakout. All right, we are now going to talk a little Modest Buzelis of the Chicago Bulls. Swing forward. I believe he was drafted 11th in his draft year. He's right around 6'10" in shoes, 210 pounds. Um, the Bulls have not been super fun over the last few years. Really stuck in a weird place. I have a lot of questions about the roster, but they drafted Caleb Wilson, sorry, um, which is reason enough.
Chicago also has Caleb
Yes,
Williams.
which is reason enough to tune in. And I think the pairing of Modest and Caleb at the swing forward positions is really, really, really interesting, despite the fact that there's a lot of just clutter overall with the roster, questions about shooting, et cetera, et cetera. But Modest Buzelis. So tell me about Modest and what has you excited, what has you questioning. Talk to me about Modest.
I don't remember offhand where I had him the year he got drafted, but I do remember I was on the lower end of our team. I remember I got some flack for that, but it's okay. Like I just had some question marks about his game. Where I'm at now with Modest, I think he's on his way to becoming exactly what you want an NBA wing to be in a lot of different ways. He is a very, very exciting player. And I think the point that you started out with is a point that I wanted to make. I think the synergy between him and Caleb Wilson could be absolutely terrifying this season. Like, I think them as these wingy, jumbo sized wings could be absolutely terrifying for the Chicago Bulls. Like, I really think what they can offer on both ends of the
Yeah.
floor can be electric. Now,
There's a lot of weak side shot blocking between those two.
absolutely. Like, Modest at 1.5. He averaged 1.5 blocks per game last year, right? And
Yeah.
a lot to like, just so much defensive playmaking with him. Now, where I wanted to talk about with you was where I'm seeing growth is obviously the outside jumper, right? 6.4 attempts per game last season, a hair under 35%. Where I think with him is, I think that could be, people might hate me for this. That might be his ceiling as a shooter.
Yeah.
And I don't say that as a bad thing. If I go back to my brain, when I was looking at Modest Buzelis heading into that draft, I probably was thinking if Buzelis could be like 34, 36%, that might be good enough. And now he's last season at 35% at over 6 attempts per game. That's pretty good. And that's not elite. It's not amazing. But from a guy who has the size that he has as a wing, who's getting it up at good volume, I'll take 35% from three. That's enough to make you think about him as a shooter. And honestly, that's kind of all you really need. Will they think about you as a shooter? Are you a threat? I think kind of does most of the work for him. On top of that, what I wanted to ask you about was, as much as I think that might be the ceiling for him as a shooter, I am holding out hope that he can get up a little bit more, just because when I watched his film, I think I watched every single jumper he took last season. And the thing that stood out to me is at times when his confidence dips, you see him really aiming his jumper. And that I didn't like, right? That's something that I want to see him kind of hash out, because I want him to continue to stay. I think he's already grown in confidence as a shooter. I want him to stay confident with the shooting, because when he's aiming his jump shot, it can get a little ugly at times. And that's one thing that if he's listening, he's probably not, because he blocked us on Twitter a couple of years ago. But if he were to be listening right now, I would tell him, but stay confident, dude. Stay confident, because when you aim your shot, that's when things you kind of find yourself in a bit of a rut, and you can kind of go downhill a little bit. And I want him to be mentally staying up here, staying confident, staying sure of himself, because if he can get there, dude, there might be a world where he's like 37, 38% as a shooter. And here's where I allowed my brain to go as kind of the resident Modest Buzelis hater. I'm like, dude, if you continue to fill out your frame and you get to 37, 38% from three, what is stopping you from being OG Anunoby? Could you get to that type of world? Could you get to that type of player prospect addition to a team? Is kind of where my brain went with him, because I'm like, the type of defensive stuff that you're
OG's
showing
thick,
already.
Though. OG's thick. Maybe we talk Mikal Bridges.
Okay, but
right?
that's what I'm like, kind of still holding out hope though, because Buzelis has that size, to him, and it's like if you could still bulk up, and his body looks closer to like a Franz Wagner, even where he's got like the thicker calves, and he's got some more mass to him. That would be great. Like I'd be really, really into Matis, and that's why. I don't remember if it was you or me who brought him up when we did KOC's show in Vegas, and I'm just thinking like, there's a lot here. There's so much to be excited about with him. And I think we talked about this so much in Vegas, Corey, the beautiful synergy and marriage between preparation and timing and luck and how that all comes together. His first 2 years and the path that he's on, with him colliding now with Caleb Wilson and that young core they might be building in Chicago with Dalen Swain and Giddey and whatever, this could be a lot. This could be a completely new chapter for Chicago Bulls basketball.
Yeah, there is I like a lot of, like, even Jalen Sellers looked really good in Summer League, and he was a Big East guy. I saw him last year, and it was like, all right, he can really fill it up, but like defensively, getting after it. And you talked about Modest defensively. We're talking about two defenders out on the wing that are really impactful in the Knicks wing stop guys, and that's where we think Modest could get to as far as impact. Obviously, Caleb Wilson, like, that's a lot of his deal, like why he's so intriguing. Dalen Swain is big and versatile as a defender, so like they have a roster full of guys who could be really impactful defenders down the line. In regards to his shooting, so 35.5% overall, he was 37.7% via synergy on catch and shoot attempts. Interestingly enough, 45.1% on unguarded attempts. On like over 100.
Yeah.
So where I'm at with him as a shooter is, you talk about synergy, his jumper doesn't always look synergistic. It could look a little mechanical, because I think that there is a stiffness to Modest overall, but it's weird because then he also has these moments of flexibility that are like, I didn't know your body type could do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it looks funky sometimes, but like the shot I think could get, because coming out, like before he was in the G League Ignite, when he was at Sunrise Christian High School, he shot it near 40% his senior year, which was a departure from his other high school
Yeah.
seasons. But it was like, oh, this is a shooter, and he struggled with the Ignite. And but there is like, I think he shoots it a little bit early. He doesn't like get to his peak as a shooter
Mm,
before he releases it. I think he shoots it a little early, and because of that, I think when he's contested, it's just a little easier to get a good contest on him,
mm,
you know? So like I think one of the things that I would say to work on for him is just to not rush his release and just like really make sure he's getting up at his peak when he does leave his feet. I think that could help because I think his follow through is pretty smooth. I mean, ball comes out a bit in front of his face, but think it really comes down to just when he's releasing the jumper overall. He was 31% on dribble jumpers, which is like, all right, that's fine. But ultimately, with where he's at as a jump shooter, and then like he didn't have a ton of self creation reps, despite what that roster looked like.
yeah.
Because I don't think he's got like side to side wiggle to really create a ton of space. He has like nice
Sure.
footwork. He gets into step backs. He likes to like do these like sweeping behind the back moves when he gets downhill to change direction and then spin off guys. So he's got a lot of cool stuff getting downhill, but there isn't a lot of like side to side stuff to get like outside jumpers to really create a ton of space. But I almost think like it's him being a second side creator instead of a main guy.
Hmm.
And now you have a guy like Caleb Wilson who, I mean, he was taking a ton of threes and like it looks like he's going to carry a ton of offensive load, in
Yeah.
his prime and hopefully early on in his career. And
Yeah.
and we just got a glimpse at Summer League. I don't know if he gets to number one option on a championship level team, but if he could be a number two, and the Bulls are still in search of their number one, and they are Chicago, they've gotten some free agents historically. Maybe they find a number one, and Modest is an elite number three, almost like a Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby or whatever, who can kind of get hot and really fill it up, but isn't going to be the guy who's shouldering
Yeah.
that load on a night to night basis. Neither of OG or Mikal, who both had, big scoring seasons. I mean, OG scored, he averaged 20 for the entirety of the playoffs. But like Mikal with the Nets, this was a 20 plus point
Yeah.
per game guy, but that wasn't the best role for him as a winner. The best role was filling in the gaps for Jalen Brunson and Cat and playing alongside OG and figuring out who was going to get those looks on a night to night basis. I think that's kind of where Modest lives. And when the Bulls position themselves to be there, I think Modest is going to be one of the best number threes in the league,
Bingo.
potentially,
Bingo.
alongside those guys, is where I'm at. You mentioned like he definitely has to get stronger. I don't know how much bulk he could put on his
Yeah.
frame or how much thicker he can get, but like this is not a guy who shies away from physicality
No. No.
on either end. Defensively, he takes bumps. Like he gets in your shirt. He's competitive, and this is a dude who wants to put everybody on a poster. It kind of bums me out that he's on the same team as Noah Senge because imagine that.
Hey, there could be some friendly fire on an offensive rebound or something.
It's true. There might be a friendly fire poster where we get a. I can't wait to introduce the Asenge scale this year. It's going to be incredible. But yeah, I don't know. And because like you, so I had Modest, I believe 11th on my board that year, where I was like, look, one, I don't believe in a ton of players in this class. This is clearly like a lottery level guy. I have some skepticism because of how he was built, built as a player. But like, this is a guy who, at his time in Chicago, from just outside Chicago, my Lithuanian brethren, I'm very optimistic about him. And I think that in year three, I think the Bulls are going to be in the spotlight a little bit more because of the team, the guys they drafted. They brought in Norm Powell. Josh Giddey is a very competent guy. I don't think they're a playoff team by any means, but they're also, I think, in a position where they're not going to try. They don't want to be in the top five because that means, or the bottom five, I guess we should say, because
Yeah.
that means that they can't get a top 5 pick in next year's draft, and this year's
Right.
draft, is looked at as weaker than some of the other classes. So if they're I think they're going to try to be competitive because they brought in a bunch of psycho competitors. Tiago Splitter is really competitive.
Yeah.
I think that like they're not going to win 40 games, but like I also don't think they're going to be a bottom feeder. And I think that some of the guys on that team, people are going to look at and be like, "Oh wow, this is a really cool player who's just not on a competitive team, but they're going to be a fun league pass team. A lot of people are going to be interested in watching them. Like I am excited for year 3 Modest Buzelis. I think he breaks out on a national stage where the Bulls are taken a little bit more seriously than they have been.
Yeah. And you nailed it. Currently, if you were to ask like any NBA fan, like who are some wings you'd love to add to your team, you'd probably mention OG Anunoby. Probably mention Mikal Bridges with the way those two guys played in the playoffs. And I think 5 years from now, everyone might just say Modest Buzelis, like straight up. Like if I want to add a complimentary player on my team who has the scoring punch to go out there and have a 38 game night one night, but then also is gonna lock in defensively. But most of the time, we'll sit around like 16, 17 points per game, and will be additive to real winning basketball. I think 5 to 6 years from now, everyone in the league might be saying Modest Buzelis. I think there's
Yeah.
a real world where that happens. And I think that's kind of why in his draft class year, I was hesitant because of what you said, how he was built. And I felt the same way about Amin Thompson, to be honest. I was really harsh on Amin Thompson because everyone was like, he's going to come in and be your starting point guard, your initiator, be this unbelievable scoring threat, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I don't see that at all. I see him
Yeah.
as being an unbelievably good basketball player, but I see him more as like a third guy who's going to do some really elite things at stuff to help you win games, but isn't your offensive engine, is how I felt about both, and why I was a little bit lower on both.
Yeah. And now Amen looks like Sean Marion
Right.
2.0. The
Right.
Matrix Reloaded just has to figure out that 3-point shot like Marion
Yeah.
did down the line. But yeah, Modest Buzelis, really intrigued. Look, prime for a big year 3, and kind of change the narrative about the Chicago Bulls. And um, I'm excited. As a somebody who didn't enjoy watching the Bulls over the last few seasons, uh, this year I think they're going to be one of the more fun teams to watch on NBA League Pass. So make sure you lock Modest in as a potential breakout candidate for year 3. And when we come back, we are going to hit garbage time. All right, folks, it's time for America's favorite segment. It's garbage time. So, Mr. Albert Garbage Time Ghim, what do you got for the listeners, the watchers, the viewers this week?
I've got a bit of a strange one as I climb onto my soapbox right now, ready to riff on some stuff. This has been a weird summer. I think overall, and for the people, our listeners who live out here in California, the climate in LA, which is we usually have the best climate on planet Earth, like most years of my life. I've lived in LA now for I'm heading to year 9 pretty soon. And every year it's been unbelievable. And in the summer it gets hot. We touch 100, 105, whatever. But it's always desert heat, right? Where as long as you're like under some shade, you're going to get some breeze, it's going to feel nice, and then at nighttime it dips to like 60, right? Which is amazing. The problem with this summer is for whatever reason the Pacific Ocean's like overheated and we're getting humidity out here. And I'm like, I'm standing outside. I'm like, I moved 3,000 miles from New York to LA to get rid of this. And I'm seeing weather reporters telling us that LA had the worst humidity in the country yesterday. And such is my luck, I decided to take my family to Disneyland yesterday on one of the worst weather days in California summer history that I've experienced. It's been a nightmare and it's been strange, and everyone wants to talk about climate change, blah, blah, blah. Here's your evidence, dude. For the first time in my 8 years living here in LA, the weather sucks in LA. It is so humid. It's so hot. I have no idea what's going on. On top of that, what the hell's going on with our food? Why is it unsafe to eat anything? We had the whole thing with the lettuce and the explosive diarrhea, and then we got blueberries on the fritz. We got salmonella in our eggs. What the hell's going on? I
There's
just want to
glass
go
in
to
our
Whole
ice pops.
glass in our. I just want to go to Whole Foods, grab my groceries, and confidently be able to eat it without being worried that I'm going to be exploding in my toilet in an hour or two. Like that sounds terrifying to me. I've been very upset about that. I'm scared to go food shopping. I'm scared to put anything in my mouth. That's been a nightmare. The last thing that I want to touch on,
Well, can
really.
I
Oh,
quickly
Corey, go ahead.
on the
Yeah,
humidity?
yeah.
New York summer has been a dream.
What the hell's going on?
Dude, it's been like 78 degrees and like kind of today it's 79 degrees today in August in New York. To the I mean it has been kind of like a little rainy and cloudy, a little too much of that to where like my beach days have been a little bit more limited,
Yeah.
but I've been wearing pants around. When I go out, we went to um, Manhattan for my 40th birthday last weekend and went to the Museum of Natural History. We walked around Central Park. We had a lovely dinner at the Mermaid Inn outside. It's been fantastic.
So I hate you. That was my life for 8 years until this year, whatever the hell's going on. I'm on Google right now. I typed in weather in Los Angeles. The first thing that comes up in big, bold red letters, extreme heat warning. Well, that's great. High 93 today, humidity 54% with wind at only 3 miles per hour. What is that? Why did I move here? What's the reason
But you
for
said
all
the
this?
ocean's been hot.
Yeah.
So this
The
might be a
Pacific
good
Ocean's hot.
this might be a good time to get into surfing. Because the Pacific Ocean can get cold.
No, it's usually frigid forever. It's always cold. Like it doesn't make sense. Even in the summer, it's cold. So yeah, that's been weird. Just two more things really quickly. I really want for our listeners out there who love and support us, continue to support me on my weight loss journey. I coached a Korean American basketball tournament recently, and I was coaching my team. We made the semifinals. We lost because we had a 12-man roster, and 7 of them had to leave in the middle of the day. God knows why. So we had 5 guys on our roster. We ended up losing. But I was coaching, and I'm like, bro, I'm 36.
Yeah.
Why am I not playing? Why did I retire from this? I used to love playing basketball. I loved playing in those tournaments because it always gets scrappy. You always get into fights. I always loved that part of it. And I was like, I'm too young to be retired from this. So I looked myself in the mirror, got too fat post marriage, on my diet ground. I'm down 13 pounds right now. I feel great about it. Going to the gym 5 times a week, trying to eat healthier, trying to do stuff. So I don't want to quit though. Like I really want to get to 3 months. I'm a month in right now and I'm feeling great, but I want to hit that like 90-day mark to see, the changes, and want to keep going there, and then play in a tournament next year is a big desire of mine. I love playing in those Korean American tournaments because like it gets super gritty and nasty, and all these Koreans who never played D1 basketball want to get nasty. And there's one dude named Matt Lee who played abroad. He played a little bit. I don't remember if he played in college or not, but he's really good, right? The 6'3" kid who was dunking it in game and stuff, and we all hate him. But my desire is to get in shape to play in another tournament. The last thing that I want to talk about, and
Quickly
this is like
on
a 30.
quickly on your
Sure.
maybe a little bit of LA stuff, a little bit of potential. You talked about food,
Sure.
um, because I watched the Travis Barker documentary that came out on Hulu
Okay.
recently, and this has nothing to do with the documentary, but he owns a restaurant because he's been doing promo and he talked about it. He owns a restaurant in LA called Crossroads. Uh,
Oh, I know
I don't,
Crossroads.
and it's a vegan restaurant, but everyone
Hmm.
who eats there said is because one of my pet peeves is when someone's like vegan or gluten free or whatever, and they're like, no, it tastes like the thing that it's acting as, and then I eat it and I'm like,
It never does.
no, it doesn't, and I don't trust you anymore because you lied to me. You lied straight to
Mhm.
my face about it. That tofu doesn't actually taste like a delicious steak. That's not what it tastes like.
Yep.
Doesn't even taste like a not delicious steak.
It tastes like tofu, you
Is
damn
what it
liar.
tastes like. So stop lying to me. But Crossroads,
Yeah.
apparent everyone who talks about it is like, no, like people don't even realize it's a vegan restaurant. they
Wow.
just think it's a restaurant. So I was wondering if you'd
Mm,
ever uh, eaten there,
no.
because I do think that if you go vegan, that there is a lot of people who are on that any kind of journey to get
Mm,
in shape. The maybe not for uh, the long term, but that is a
yeah.
way that you can, as long as you're getting your proteins in. But I didn't know if had ever been there.
No, never been a vegan guy. I am trying to do like extremely low carb, not no carb, but like
Yeah,
extremely low carb,
like a
protein
keto.
heavy. Yeah, kind of a keto. I'm doing intermittent fasting and then trying to count my calories to the best that I can. So it's been what I'm doing.
I had a
But yeah,
rude awakening. I mean, I've been, I also, I had lost like uh probably about 15
15
pounds.
pounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but over the last year, I had to look myself in the mirror the other day. I spent $100 on takeout ice cream, on Uber Eats delivery ice cream last week. Because I couldn't get to the store, like Uncle Giuseppe's, to like get the ice cream that I like. And they don't always have it because they make like it fresh or whatever, and they have
Yeah.
these like cookie sandwiches
Oh
um
God.
that are like either like fresh gelato or whatever. And I just couldn't get there, and I was like, dude, like you spent $100 on Uber Eats deliveries for for Friendly's ice cream at like
Yeah.
11 p.m. And last night I went on the app to try to order it, and it was like earlier. It was like 10:30 or something, and for whatever reason they were like closed. And I was like, that is your wake up call that you can't spend unless you want to gain that 15 pounds back. You have to stop.
I really, Corey, one day we need to dedicate an episode to talk about your food, your relationship with food. If our listeners knew the journey that you've been on with Oreos, the
Mm,
journey that you've been on with Coke Zero,
yeah.
your really, really contentious relationship with like lettuce, like there are so many, so many stories that our listeners don't know about you.
Next week I'll tell my Oreo story.
Hey, for our listeners out there, tune in for that one. I've heard the story maybe 6 times, and it's better every time I hear it because it's so intense and it speaks to your personality. The last thing that I want to say for our 30 plus viewers out there, if you're a man or no man or woman actually, because I play in a co-ed league, but if you're 30 plus, get into slow pitch softball, man. It rocks. I've been playing with my best friends for like the last I think we're in like year 3 or 4 now. We play in a Glendale public league against like older, gentlemen from all over the city. A lot of them are like in their early 30s and 40s, these white dudes who played baseball their whole lives, so they absolutely demolish us sometimes because they've got decades of experience. But it's a ton of fun. It's low impact. You spend a lot of money on equipment, but it's fun. You buy $300 bats because you convince yourself you need them, but it's a ton of fun, and I would highly recommend.
I would like to say, um, don't do that because you could end up like me, who is playing. I don't remember if it was. I think I was short and I was sliding over to make a tag at second.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes in these slow pitch softball leagues, you get guys who aren't as athletic as you think you are. And at the time, I was in my probably like early mid 20s, and I was very athletic. And I come over, I make this great play, and this person just does not know how to slide, and
Uh-huh.
somehow their knee goes into my nose and breaks my nose for what is like the third time. And
Jeez.
I was like, oh, I don't need to play this anymore. These dudes were like pounding a six pack before the game. I
That
don't
is
need
part of the fun
I
though.
don't need to
Like
be a part of this.
yeah, on my team we have one guy who brings a six pack with him and there's music playing. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun,
Yeah,
but don't break your nose.
there's a
Guys,
lot
be
of
careful.
camaraderie. I enjoyed men's league basketball a little bit more, even
Oh, okay.
though at one my nose, I've broken it a bunch of times. Um, I wore a mask one time because my nose
Oh,
got jacked up. So I
jeez.
was playing with a mask. But unlike the cool masks that are fitted to the NBA players' faces that fit, the mask that I was wearing, I got from like Dick's Sporting Goods, and
Oh,
like it was messing with my vision to where I could see everything straight, but when I looked in a different direction, my vision was really off.
damn.
So at one point, somebody passed the ball to me, and I was like ready to catch it, but it was from an angle, and it just went out of bounds. And so I ripped the mask off, and the next possession, like I dive for a loose ball, and I get elbowed right in the nose, and I was just like, and my nose was fine. It hit in a spot in which it was like okay, but
Okay.
there's a lot of wild people out in any kind of men's league that you play. So just be if you're somebody who's willing
Oh.
to embrace the physicality, because I no longer am. But if you are, then you have a blast.
We've gotten into some fights in slow ball, slow pitch softball too. My buddy Josh, this hothead, went at this like 50-year-old Armenian guy, and they were like, grabbing each other by the throat, and it was gnarly. But all in good fun, maybe not.
Yeah.
Last thing, Corey, for someone who's broken his nose 3 times, your nose looks very normal. A good looking nose for a guy who broke it
Well,
that
I
many
I
times.
appreciate that. I do feel lucky. I actually you can feel the bridge of my
Oh,
nose. There's like because a lot of people will say that and be like, no, like feel my nose, and it's
ooh.
it's like like feeling a jagged piece of glass.
Oh, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah. It's bizarre.
Uh,
And the bridge of my nose is a little crooked, like to one
uh,
side. Which is why I like to get my left side taken in images. It's my good side now. But yeah, but if enjoy, not for
Stay
me.
safe, guys. Stay safe.
Um, the only thing I kind of want to touch on,
Yeah.
and shout out to our friend Stephen Gillespie
Mm.
of No Ceilings fame. He introduced me to my first um, Chick-fil-A breakfast experience. We were in Atlanta for the Thompson Twins Overtime Elite Pro Day. I had gotten in to Atlanta at like my flight got delayed a couple of times because it's a pretty short flight from
Yeah.
New York. And the flight was delayed a couple of times. I think I flew Spirit because I was going to be there for like 26 hours total or something. And I got in late. So Steven went out and got breakfast that morning. He got Chick fil A breakfast. Chick fil A breakfast rocks. They introduced I think on August 24th, they introduced a chicken and waffles situation.
Yep.
Run, don't walk. That joint is fire.
You can get a regular or spicy.
I haven't tried the spicy yet, but
Okay.
um I think I'm going to try it because I didn't know how like because I dipped mine in syrup
Mm.
and I didn't know how like the syrup would complement the spicy,
No,
but
that
yeah.
hot honey, dude. Like it's the same
Oh,
concept.
oh,
Gotta run the spicy.
interesting. Which I had a pizza party for my buddy's 40th birthday this weekend and brought my pizza oven over and we went ham on the hot honey on the pizza.
Mm. Mm.
Pepperoni, meatball, hot honey, fire,
Game changer.
game
Done.
changer. All right, we have ran really long today, but thank
Yeah.
you everybody for watching with us. Please, if you haven't yet, if you were watching on YouTube, like, subscribe to the channel. If you were watching elsewhere, we appreciate you. If you're listening, thank you all so much. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't. Uh, we will be back again next week to tell my Oreo story. And until then, we are out. See